Picture this. It's 3 in the morning and you wake up for no reason. Not because of the thunder, not because of the rain. Because something feels wrong. The room is dark. The house is silent. But under that silence, there's a hum. Like the walls are carrying a sound you can't quite hear. You lie there, and for one strange second, you can't remember why you woke up. Then the thought arrives. What if the feeling isn't coming from inside you? What if something is being broadcast into the room? For decades, people have asked a simple question. Can certain frequencies reach into the human brain? Can they change your mood? Can they make you anxious, foggy, angry, or afraid, without you ever knowing why? And if that were possible, who would control the signal? Now picture a valley in Alaska. Snow, mountains, empty roads, and in the middle of it, a grid of 180 antennas pointed straight up at the sky. The place is called HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Officially, it studies the ionosphere, the charged layer at the top of our atmosphere. But the conspiracy says HAARP is something else, a machine that doesn't just study the sky, a machine that can reach through it and touch the people underneath. Now, I know how that sounds. There's no solid evidence that HAARP can control anyone's mind. None. But the pieces around this story are real. The military was involved. The facility really does fire powerful radio waves into the sky. Researchers really have studied low-frequency signals. And the government really did spend years experimenting on human perception and behavior. So tonight, the question isn't just whether a machine can change the weather. The darker question is this. Could a machine built to touch the atmosphere also touch the mind of everyone living beneath it?
Every story leaves a trace. A missing file. A witness who changes their statement. A symbol repeated too many times to be coincidence. And somewhere in that noise, there's a pattern. Welcome to the Tin Foil Diaries. If you see the world through rose-colored glasses, if it makes you happy, keep them on. But this is a serious look into conspiracies, cover-ups, fringe mysteries, and the things we were told to laugh off before we were told to fear them. Each entry is traced by the host, the voice at the end of the wire, sorting fact from rumor, theory from evidence, and signal from static. Because the truth rarely arrives clean. It flickers. It distorts. It hides in plain sight. Let's follow the signal. The signal.
Welcome back to the Tin Foil Diaries, where we don't just wonder what's in the sky, we ask who's using it. I'm your host, and tonight's entry is called the ionosphere machine, the HAARP mind control conspiracy. This is a story about a field of antennas in Alaska, a military research program, a strange patent, and a theory that simply refuses to die. Officially, HAARP studies the ionosphere, the upper layer of the atmosphere shaped by solar radiation and charged particles. That research matters for radio, satellites, radar, and navigation. But conspiracy theorists hear something different. They believe HAARP can generate or amplify frequencies that reach the human brain, that it can flood a whole region with fear or confusion, that it can make people more suggestible, more restless, more willing to believe things they'd normally question. In the mildest form, the theory says HAARP nudges your mood. In its most extreme form, it says HAARP can broadcast control into your head. No wires, no device, no warning. Tonight, we'll separate the science from the speculation. We'll look at what HAARP actually does. We'll walk through the military history that gave this theory life. And we'll talk about frequencies, patents, and old government experiments that really happened. And we'll ask the hardest question of all: why a story about invisible mind control feels so believable now, in an age where we already know our attention is being tracked and sold. So let's follow the signal. So let's start with the place. A remote valley, cold air, open sky, and rising out of the snow, rows of metal antennas lined up with unnatural precision. From above, HAARP doesn't look like a research station. It looks like a circuit board dropped into the wilderness. HAARP started in the early 90s, funded by the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Navy, DARPA, and the University of Alaska. And that DARPA part alone sets off alarms. DARPA doesn't build bird feeders. This is the agency behind battlefield technology that sounds like science fiction, right up until it quietly becomes normal. So when people learned there was a military-linked site in Alaska firing radio waves into the sky, they didn't hear academic research. They heard one question: what are they actually doing up there? According to the University of Alaska Fairbanks, HAARP uses 180 antennas across 33 acres, and it can push several megawatts of energy into the upper atmosphere. That sounds terrifying. It sounds like it's enough to cook the sky. But here's where I have to be fair. A single lightning bolt carries more energy than that. The sun pours far more into our atmosphere every second than HAARP could produce in a year. That's the skeptic's answer, and it's a strong one. Still, when the official line is, relax, we're just heating a small patch of the upper sky with a military transmitter, that doesn't exactly calm people down. And the location made it worse. HAARP wasn't built next to a city where anyone could watch it work. It was tucked into rural Alaska, cold, remote, hard to just drive by and check on. For years, most people knew nothing about it at all. So imaginations filled in the blanks. People noticed headaches, insomnia, anxiety, sudden bad moods that came out of nowhere. And when they heard about the antennas in Alaska, the connections started forming. Maybe the headaches weren't stress. Maybe the anxiety wasn't in their heads. Maybe something was being broadcast, and they were feeling it without knowing. And this is where the mind control theory begins. The reasoning goes like this. The brain runs on electrical activity. Neurons fire using electrical signals. So if the brain uses electricity, maybe an outside signal can interfere with it. And that idea contains just enough truth to be dangerous. Electromagnetic energy can affect the body under certain conditions. Medical devices use it. Certain treatments can stimulate targeted areas of the brain. Strong radio energy can heat tissue. But the leap from energy can affect the body in a controlled setting to a transmitter in Alaska can control the thoughts of millions is enormous. That leap needs evidence, and that evidence has never shown up. Still, the theory sticks, because HAARP looks exactly like the machine you'd imagine if someone said the words remote influence. It's powerful. It's invisible when it runs. It's tied to the military, and it points straight up. So let's lay it out. The full version. Believers say HAARP can create electromagnetic effects that reach the human nervous system. Some focus on extremely low frequency waves. Others talk about the secondary signals HAARP might generate when it heats the ionosphere. The claim is that these low frequencies can travel long distances, that they can pass through buildings, through ground, through water, and through people. And the theory says a person caught in that signal might feel it as anxiety, as sleeplessness, as confusion, as anger that seemed to come from nowhere. In the extreme version, the signal carries more than a mood. It carries a message, something that slips past your conscious mind, a command that never sounds like a command. The signal wouldn't need to say, do this. It would just create a feeling, fear, urgency, helplessness. And then, the theory goes, a government could use that feeling to spread panic during a crisis, to soften resistance, to steer a whole population toward a reaction. Now, there are really several claims stacked on top of each other here, and they don't all hold the same weight. Claim number 1, electromagnetic fields can affect the body, which is true in some cases. Claim number 2, they can affect the brain. Also true under controlled medical conditions. Claim number 3, a distant transmitter can target whole populations through the sky. This claim is unsupported. Claim number 4, that signal can plant specific thoughts. Again, this has no credible evidence. And claim number 5, HAARP is the machine doing it. And that has never been demonstrated. And this is the trick these stories play. They take a chain of real facts and arrange them into conclusions the facts don't actually reach. Yes, a medical device can stimulate the brain. That doesn't mean every antenna can read your mind. Yes, a transmitter can send a signal for miles. That doesn't mean the signal can rewrite who you are. The brain isn't a radio waiting for the right frequency. Human thought depends on biology, memory, emotion, environment, and attention all at once. To control someone's decisions from a distance, you'd need to know their brain, their mood, their surroundings, and their memories. And even then, producing one specific action would be almost impossible. But the theory survives because people don't picture total control. They picture influence. And influence is so much easier to believe. Maybe HAARP doesn't make you obey. Maybe it just makes you irritable. Maybe it doesn't insert a thought. Maybe it just makes you more likely to accept one. That version is quieter, and it's almost impossible to disprove. If you're calm, the signal failed. If you're angry, it worked. If nothing happens, it was hidden. A theory that explains every possible outcome can't really be tested. And that's one of the clearest signs we've crossed from science into speculation. But this theory didn't come from nowhere. It grew out of a real history, one that makes the fear a lot harder to wave off. During the Cold War, the CIA ran a program called MKUltra. It involved experiments with drugs, hypnosis, interrogation, and psychological manipulation. Many were unethical. Some were done on people who never agreed to any of it. And the whole thing only came to light through investigations in the 1970s. That's real, and it changed everything about how people hear official denials. Because if the government secretly experimented on people once, why would anyone assume it simply stopped? That's a fair question, but it still doesn't prove HAARP is a mind control machine. It only explains why people are willing to believe it could be. There's also real military interest in electromagnetic and directed energy technology. Militaries care about communications, about radar, about jamming signals and protecting their own. And the ionosphere matters to all of that because it can reflect and distort radio waves. Understanding it gives you an edge without controlling anyone's mind. That's the sober reason the military cared. Not, can we spin up a tornado? And not, can we hypnotize a city? It's, can we understand the layer of the sky that carries our signals? War runs on communication, and communications run through the ionosphere. Then there's the weather chapter. During the Vietnam War, the U.S. ran Operation Popeye, a cloud seeding program meant to increase rainfall over enemy supply routes and bog them down. That wasn't a rumor. It was a real, classified military operation to change the environment for military gain. And once people learn that, the next thought writes itself. If they tried to change the weather, what else did they try? If they studied radio signals, did they study what those signals do to people? If they experimented with the mind before, are they still? Those are reasonable questions, but they are not proof of a connection. Cloud seeding does not prove a mind control ray. MKUltra does not prove HAARP. What all of it proves is something softer, and in a way more unsettling, that the fear didn't come from nothing. It came from a track record. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because conspiracy culture doesn't run on official statements. It runs on paper trails, and HAARP's paper trail has just enough strange ink on it to keep people awake. Start with a physicist named Bernard Eastlund. Back in 1987, he was granted a patent. And I want you to actually hear the title. Method and Apparatus for Altering a Region in the Earth's Atmosphere, Ionosphere, and Magnetosphere. That is not a title designed to make anyone feel calm. The patent describes beaming energy upward to a region of the upper atmosphere. Years later, conspiracy theorists tied Eastlund's idea straight to HAARP. Now, holding a patent for an idea isn't proof that HAARP does everything people claim. A patent is just an idea someone owns on paper. It doesn't mean the machine in Alaska runs that exact program. But you can see the problem. Officials say, don't worry, HAARP just studies the ionosphere. Then someone digs up a patent that reads, here's a method for altering the ionosphere. A suspicious mind doesn't split that hair. It connects the dots. Maybe too fast, maybe unfairly, but it connects them. Then came the book, Angels Don't Play This HAARP. It framed the facility as a potential superweapon, one that could disrupt communications, tamper with weather, and interfere with human thought. Critics say the book stretched the science far past the evidence. That's probably true, but conspiracy theories don't need airtight proof. They need atmosphere, and HAARP had it in spades. A remote military link site, a powerful antenna array, a patent with genuinely ominous wording, and a documented history of governments experimenting on both the weather and the mind. Meanwhile, mainstream scientists kept repeating the same thing over and over. HAARP can't control the weather, and it can't control your brain. And somehow, the reputation just kept growing. Because HAARP makes the perfect villain. You can't see radio waves. You can't see the ionosphere. You can't watch a signal cross the sky. It's invisible action. And invisible action is exactly where fear likes to breed. Alright, let's slow this ride way down for a moment, because this is where we separate the signal from the static. What does HAARP actually do? It sends radio waves up into the ionosphere and heats a small patch of it, so scientists can watch how the upper atmosphere behaves. Think less weather machine or mind ray and more a laboratory flashlight aimed at the edge of space. Just a very expensive, very strange, military-born flashlight. So could HAARP control your mind? The honest answer is no. There's no credible evidence for it. Can electromagnetic fields affect the body in certain controlled ways? Yes. Do militaries research directed energy? Absolutely. Do radio waves interact with our devices constantly? Of course. But the jump from all of that to HAARP can program a population through the sky isn't backed by anything solid. Here's why the mind control version is so hard to support. Your brain isn't a simple receiver. Your thoughts come from biology, memory, emotion, and everything happening around you all at the same time. A vague signal from hundreds of miles away can't reach into that and hand you a specific thought. The gap between energy can warm tissue and energy can write ideas into your head is not a small step. It's a giant leap. But here's what I'll admit. The debunk doesn't make HAARP feel normal, because it still represents something unsettling. This human urge to reach into the sky and interfere with it. Not just observe it, interfere. Push energy into a natural system and see what happens. That doesn't mean it can control your mind. But as a symbol, HAARP might be the perfect haunted object for a technological age. It's not a castle, it's not a pyramid, not a temple buried underground. It's just a machine pointed straight up. And somehow, that's enough. So why won't this die? Why does it survive every denial? Because it's answering a feeling, not a question. The question is, can HAARP control your mind? And the answer is no. But the feeling underneath is different. It's the sense that something is influencing you, that your attention isn't fully your own, that your moods, your focus, your fears are being shaped by forces you can't see. And here's the uncomfortable part. That feeling isn't crazy. We already live inside invisible networks. Our attention really is tracked. Our emotions really are targeted. Algorithms really do learn what make us anxious, angry, or afraid, and then feed it back to us on purpose. So when someone says a machine can reach into your mind without your consent, it doesn't sound like fantasy anymore. It sounds like a slightly exaggerated version of something people already feel every single day. HAARP just gives that feeling a face, a location, a fenced-off field in Alaska where the invisible thing supposedly lives. It's easier to point at a tower than to sit with the truth that our own devices already do a gentler version of what we fear the tower does. That's really what this is about underneath it all. Not antennas, not plasma, not frequencies. Control. The fear that somewhere, someone has found a way to reach past your defenses and shape what you think. That your choices might not be entirely yours. And even if HAARP has nothing to do with any of it, that fear is pointing at something real. Because influence, at scale, is no longer science fiction. It's an industry. That's why people keep saying HAARP, because it's easier to say HAARP than to say, I'm not sure my thoughts are entirely my own anymore. So, where does that leave us? Is HAARP a mind control weapon? No. There's no credible evidence that it can steer emotions, plant thoughts, or program a population through the sky. It's publicly operated by the University of Alaska Fairbanks and described, consistently, as an ionospheric research program. Its main instrument is a transmitter built to study the upper atmosphere, not the human brain. The science does not support the idea that it can reach into your mind. So as a literal, physical conspiracy, HAARP mind control does not hold up. But that doesn't mean the fear behind it is meaningless. The CIA really did experiment on human minds through MKUltra. The military really did fund ionospheric research because that layer of the sky matters for communications and defense. A real patent really did describe altering regions of the atmosphere. And governments really have tried in the past to manipulate both the weather and the mind. So here's the honest verdict. HAARP is almost certainly not a mind control machine, but it became the symbol of something real. A history of secret experiments, a growing distrust of official explanations, and the very modern, very justified fear that our thoughts can be shaped by forces we can't see. HAARP didn't invent that fear. It just gave it a mailing address. Tonight, when you feel a mood shift for no reason, a wave of anxiety, a sudden fog, a restlessness you can't explain, I'm not asking you to blame a field in Alaska, but I am asking you to notice how easily we've come to believe our minds can be reached from the outside. Because that belief didn't come from nowhere. We live in a world that measures our attention, learns our fears, and sells them back to us all day long. HAARP is just the dramatic version of a quiet truth we've already accepted. So the next time your thoughts feel a little too loud or a little too controlled, don't just ask whether something is broadcasting into your head. Ask who already has your attention, and ask when you handed it over. Good night.
That closes this entry of the Tin Foil Diaries. But the file doesn't end just because the tape stops. Follow or subscribe so the next signal finds you. And if this entry made you pause, question, or look twice at the story you were handed, leave a 5-star rating and a short review. That is how we slip past the algorithm and keep the transmission alive. Send this to one person who still notices the details everyone else ignores. And for the deeper dive, the timelines, theories, strange documents, in-depth articles, and lies, visit the tinfoildiaries.fyi. Until next time, keep your eyes open. Keep your doubts sharp. And never forget, the pattern is always louder in the static.
That thought you just had, are you sure it was yours?